G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video on video transitions where basically I get to run you through a bunch of things that I use to go from one scene to another when I animate in Adobe Flash. Now these things are applicable to other things like editing software like After Effects or other animation software as well. So I'm just going to use 5 different sample transitions. They're all fairly basic and some of them get a little trickier, but the first ones are really simple. And so what I've got here, I've got 70 frames of one scene and I've got 70 frames of another, and I'm going to be using this 140 frame period to transition between these two very opposing scenes. They're quite different. It's almost like this scene has wrapped up, so we've finished the battle and people have died, and then we're going to a completely different sort of atmosphere and setting the scene elsewhere so that we can show a movement from one area, one entire part of the narrative to a completely different one. And the very first transition I'm going to do is a fade to black. Now this is called a VCam. This is a virtual camera I have here in Flash. If you want to pinch it from me, it's an ActionScript 3.1. You can download the reference files with the link in the description. Otherwise, basically it acts as a camera, so when I zoom in and publish it, you can see that it zooms in on that area there. So that aside, I'm going to lock everything and I'm going to add a new frame above the images but under the VCam. You don't necessarily have to have it under the VCam for it to work, but I do so I can see the VCam on top of the transitions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select nothing for the line fill and select black for the paint fill, and just in this layer click and drag and draw a black box. And that's as simple as it is to start. Okay, now I'm going to start the fade at frame 30, so I'm going to hit F6 there and delete everything before then. And then at 70 it's going to be fully black, so I'm going to hit F6, and then at 110 it's going to be back to 0 again. So at the moment it's all black. What I'm going to do is select this first frame and click and drag the alpha to 0. So when I deselect, you can see it's invisible. And quite simply right click here and shape tween, and then we can see that this shape is tweening from a transparent black to an opaque black. And then back at this end square again, transition this to 0% alpha, and I'll delete everything after that with F7, just make a blank keyframe. And once again right click and shape tween, and we've very easily made our first transition. Now this is a simple one, but it's one I use all the time. I use it all the time. I know it's very simple, but it's just very common and useful. So you can see that we've got this transition there. Another thing you can do to make this a little more effective, if we want to really separate these scenes, is add more space in this area here by adding a delay. So I might want to hit F6 and make this 0% as well, and then remove the tween on this frame. And then if I select all of this and just hit F5, I can just push out the amount of frames that are staying pure black. And I might want to extend that, maybe bring these back from frame 20 and then have a full 15 frames of nothing but blackness, and that really helps separate the scenes and create a more of a tense, slower driven narrative. So in testing, whoops, that didn't really work. Why didn't that work? Because this needs to be at 100%, not 0%. Let's test that again. We go fade to black, and then we go to our new scene. So that is the first scene transition that I use all the time, and I'll save that. Again, if you want to use these reference files, you want to have a look at how I've done them and use them yourself, or just kind of fiddle around, reference is in the description. So the next is cross dissolve, and I've got a whole bunch of different files that use the base that I've started off with, just so you can kind of see how I work from the ground up each time. So the cross dissolve is where I'm going to go from this shot to this shot without disappearing completely, without fading to black. Now in doing this, I'm actually going to have them cross over each other. So I'm going to drag this frame out to 100 and this frame forward to, let's say, 30. Okay. Now I'm going to hit F6 here on this layer, and F6 at the end here, and drag this out, F6 to frame 100, and I'm going to select it. Now over here on the properties panel, I'm going to hit color effect, and where it says style on the drop down box, I'm going to go and select alpha, and this allows me to change the opacity of that image that I've selected of the movie clip. Now both of them are movie clip things, so that kind of gives you an indication as to how I'm doing that. So I right click, add a classic tween, and quite simply we've got our scene transition. So hitting Control Enter, you can see that rendered, and it's quite straightforward. So it's a pretty simple one, and it's also a useful one. Something you can do as well if you're interested in having a little more of a dynamic look is from the very start to the very end have the camera move. So at the very first frame we'll have it up, and at the very last frame we'll move it down, and we'll add a tween to the camera, and we can see that we get this look, and then when we render it, it's just a little more visually interesting. So you can see we start up there nice and clean, and then we get this sort of changing look, and it really adds to a more narrative sort of feel. Now the next transition is quite similar, so I'm going to start off by dragging the bottom frame and top frame so that they overlap, and the camera's just going to stay perfectly still. I'm just going to create new keyframes over each other here, so these both layers have a keyframe at the same time, and then at the end one they have a keyframe at the same time. I'll go over why that is in a moment, and I'm just going to hide everything but this layer. Okay, so going out to this last keyframe, I'm going to select it. In the properties panel, I'm going to add a blur. I'm going to make the blur 20 and make it a high quality blur. And on top of that, I'm going to go to my color effect panel and add alpha, and it's by default 0% because I had selected that before. Now when I add a classic tween, not only does it fade out to 0, but it also blurs at the same time. I can add a more dramatic blur, so let's say 50. And then on the layer underneath, I'll just hide this top layer and reveal the bottom layer, and I'm going to do the same in reverse. So on the first frame, I'm going to select this, add blur 50, high quality, and that's a very blurry blur, and make it alpha 0%, and then add a classic tween. And now you see when I reveal both of them, we get this really soft transition between them. Okay, now the thing to be wary of is that this point in the middle, they're both slightly invisible. So I'm going to add a layer underneath of just a plain black, like that. And it just means that nothing kind of shows through. And now when I test and play this, we've got that soft transition with a cross-fading blur between them. They dissolve and blur amongst each other. So that looks quite cool. They're three quite simple ones, and now for the last two we're going to get a little more tricky. Okay, so this one we're going to use a mask. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what masks are, it's where you create a new layer, and whatever you draw on that layer when you create the mask only shows where that drawing region is shown. So I'm going to hide the camera for now. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to show you how a mask works first and foremost. I'm going to create this box, and I'm going to skew it like this and drag it nice and wide and big. I'm skewing it because I want a little angled sort of transition. So I'm just going to save this as a symbol, hitting F8, and I'll call it transition. And now this on one layer and the image on another, I'll hit right click and hit mask, and you can see how the image only shows within that drawing region. Okay, so when I unlock it, you can see the image that I just drew, the movie clip I just drew, and when I lock the mask, you can see that it only shows that. So in creating this transition, it's quite simple. I'm going to have both images visible the whole time. Okay, so they take up the whole timeline, this one takes up the whole timeline, and I'm just simply going to take this mask and cover the whole screen. It needs to be a bit wider, like that. Just drag it over so it covers it. And then here, from frame 30 to frame 110, I'm going to click and drag it across until it is no longer visible. Just completely straight across, create a classic tween, and then when I lock these layers, you can see we've got this transition. Now, something that I recommend doing in your fade-ins and fade-outs is using eases. So I'm going to select this layer here in this motion tween area, and eases is where is something you can use to slow up or speed down. No, I got that the wrong way around. Slow down or speed up the transition as it goes along. So for example, I'll hide everything but this layer, and if I ease in 100, it means it starts off really slow and then whew, speeds up. If I ease out, it means it starts off quicker and then slows right down. Okay, so it's quite useful, and I tend to use, in situations like this, a custom ease, where in selecting the frame and hitting the pencil, I can, to whatever degree I'd like, really tweak and alter how the ease works. So I'm going to start off with a really strong ease in and a really strong ease out, and that means that we have this soft sort of wipe effect. Then I'm just going to lock all the layers, and I'm quite happy with how that transition works. I'm going to just test it so you can see it in context, and it's quite clear how that, you know, plays out. The last one I want to do, I'm going to call the horizontal flash, and this one is quite difficult to do properly. There are lots of ways of doing it, and I'm just going to select both of these images and put them in the same layer. Oh, sorry, not the same layer, cover the same area of the timeline, but I'm just going to drag them sitting right next to each other and slightly underlay them on each other like this. And I'm going to select them both and combine them. I'm going to convert them both to a single symbol. I'll call this combined scenes. Okay, now this horizontal flash is going to mean that this camera is going to simply transition from here, and from frame 25 to frame 100, it's going to go over here. Okay, I'm going to create a classic tween, and it's a bit boring. Okay, so how do we make a horizontal flash? First of all, I'm going to speed it up. I gave myself far too much room, so I'm going to drag this in, and let's go from frame 50 to frame 80. So now it's a faster transition, and again, I'm going to use a custom ease. So I'm going to hit this pencil, I'm going to really speed it up and really slow it down very rapidly, and then all of a sudden, we get a very quick pan across. Okay, in this period of time where the camera is traveling, I'm going to hit F6 and F6 so that everything in the middle is its own thing, and hit F6 on frame 60 so that I can tween into the transition that I'm going to make. I'm going to select this background, hit blur, add a blur, and I'm going to unlock this. So by default, the blur is locked to, when I increase the blur, blur horizontally and vertically at the same time. So I'm going to unlink them so that I can go 0 on vertical and heaps on horizontal, right? So we get this really sharp, harsh, blurring look, right? I'm going to add a classic tween so that we can see as the camera moves across, by the time it's got good motion happening, the screen is massively blurred, right? And it actually merges the two images in a way. So here we have this really hard line dividing these two backgrounds, whereas by the time the camera reaches that segment, the two are so blurred together that you can't see that hard line anymore. And now the camera's flashing across, and right before it slows down here, I'm going to hit F6, and then I'm going to tween, and it'll go back to normal. Okay, now at the top we have the ease in and ease out in a custom tween. I'm going to, not custom, but I'm going to ease. So I'm going to select this bottom tween, ease in, and this bottom tween, ease out. That means we increase, zoom across, and then we decrease. Okay, so this is our flash, and this is what it looks like when I render it. Hit Control Enter. Okay, so it didn't render properly because everything's so large. I'm going to see if this fixes it. I'm just going to... I actually think it's because the blur is quite large. So I'm going to make the blur... It is quite large. It's like 250. So let's go 50. No, can't do that. Let's go 120. Let's see what this looks like. There we go. So I've got to make sure that the blur here is the same, 120. And now when I hit Control Enter to render, we can see that there we go, the transition is exactly what I wanted it to be. So we get this, it's almost like the camera's turning from one scene into another. Now this would be used where the scene is a little more continuous, where we're not moving from a completely different area to another, but you can use it in a way as however you want to tell the story. So that's just a simple approach to 5 different scene transitions that we've got. The first scene transition we created was this fade to black, and it's very common. I use it all the time, no matter how simple or professional the work I'm trying to create is, because it creates a clean, clear barrier between scenes. This is my dramatic cross dissolve one, where basically I'm just fading from one immediately to the other, and I've added a little bit of camera motion to add a bit of drama and narrative interest as well. So you can see that too. This one's quite similar. This is also a cross dissolve, but we're blurring both to the point of near unrecognizability and then unblurring as we reveal the other one as well, and it just shows that really soft transition from one scene into the next scene. This is the masked wipe, where, as you can see, we can wipe across there, and you can do it in all different shapes. And this is where, as in The Simpsons, Homer would always demand Flanders be given a star wipe in his dating video. This is where you would create a star wipe. You just create the shape, you tween it, you move it about, and you do the motion until something is either fully or not at all encompassed by that shape, and then we transition between them, and as you can see, we get that transition. Then the final one here is the one we just finished, which is the blurred horizontal flash, where we just zip across from one shot to another. There are lots of ways of doing this. If you want to do a more effective horizontal flash and you don't want to depend on Adobe Flash's rendering capabilities with blurs, what I tend to often do is create the blurred shot in Photoshop and overlay that with a transparency, and then make it disappear once the shot is done, and that does the same effect minus the rendering effort that Flash has to go through to create the blurs. Anyways, I hope this video has been interesting to you. These sort of video transitions are quite useful, especially when you're creating a very narrative based story, animation, things like that, where you want to have some visual interest between different scene transitions and not have it always the same. So otherwise, if you want to check out the reference files, check out the link in the description, which will go to where you can download them, play with them, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.